and protection of all students, faculty, and staff, we will be keeping our programs remote throughout the fall of 2020. We're, of course, hoping that there will be a vaccine that's developed, and so that we have every intention at this point of reopening our campuses to students as of the winter of 2021. This brings us to a really interesting question about why now. This is an unprecedented moment in the history of the world, the history of the country, California, and Pacifica Graduate Institute. The COVID-19 infection epidemic, this influenza epidemic, is not the first that's hit humanity, but it's the one where we have reached the place technologically that we understand how it's transmitted and really the safeguards that we must put into place, and then the tension between the economic and the health consequences of this. So at this moment, we want to reflect first on pandemics. They're terrible. They cause enormous pain and suffering, economic as well as physical and medical suffering that occurs. And it creates a tremendous amount of psychological suffering as a consequence. I can say with all honesty here that all the experts that I know are predicting in the near future, we are going to have a very large mental health dilemma to deal with as a society, as well as a world. And that the mission of Pacifica about the use of depth psychology applied to the humanities is needed now more than ever. This is a moment to seize. And the point in getting through an epidemic is first to survive, obviously, but beyond that, it's to thrive. The history of pandemics has shown us that there are times of terrible loss followed by times of enormous innovation and creativity. We go back to probably the most famous of the pandemics would be the Black Plague in the middle of the 14th century that devastated Europe. 50% of the population of Europe died. But as a consequence, social mobility became possible because there were fewer people and there were many more opportunities in the wake of this. This led directly to two major consequences. One was the Renaissance, the revitalization of society, the return of a depth understanding in a certain kind of way, mythologically, to the origins of society. And secondly, this led to really an aspect of modernity that scholars will say the sense of the value of the individual really rose during this period. It became enormously important that those that survived were valued in a different way. And this ultimately leads to the origins of the modern state and the kind of democratic freedoms that we have. So terrible pandemic, incredible transformations. Go several centuries later, in 1665, there was an outbreak of the bubonic plague in London. Isaac Newton was a young man in his very early 20s. He escaped to the countryside, to Woolthorpe, where he spent about a year and a half in isolation, quarantined. During that time, he developed the mathematics and physics that he became so famous for. When the epidemic was over, he went back to Cambridge and within a very short period of time became a professor and went on to write most of his creative works. And he cites this period of his life in the pandemic and the aftermath as the place where his year of miracles is what he called it, where he discovered all of this. So terrible suffering, creative flowering. Now, what about at Pacifica? Well, we're redesigning things. We're really taking this online move in a very serious way, and we've gotten some wonderful support for that. We're transforming our courses. We're currently all online, and we have made a significant investment, as is our faculty, in learning and understanding ways to optimize the pedagogy, ways to bring the experiential dimension of what we do to you directly by various kinds of breakout groups and asynchronous learning that takes you into your community and involves you, or you bring it back then. So I'd like to think about it as live locally, and connect globally. And that is a way of enhancing Pacifica's mission. It's a moment in time. We think about the human psyche. We've begun to really understand that it, in its deepest levels, is not local. And that non-locality is amplified in the virtual world. It's a chance for that world to become reconsidered from a depth perspective. As my friend and colleague, Dr. Rojcewicz would call it, the Soul 2.0. And that's what we're really cultivating and developing here at Pacifica. And this is a moment to join in that great experiment and that great transformation that we're doing. Things will not return to normal, status quo ante, at the end of this. We will be different, as will many other industries and other sort of institutions of higher learning. But we want to be in the forefront of what happens, and that's where our energies are going. So I'd like to invite you into that transformative discovery process with us, where you'll be able to learn anything you want, anytime, anywhere. That's one of our goals in terms of depth psychology. So with that, I'd like to quickly turn it over to our Provost, Dr. Rojcewicz, for a little more insights in that. Thanks.
Thank you, President Cambray. And what a pleasure to be with all of you today for more than your first time. I'm happy that you're here to be talking and getting information around enrollment and admissions, as well as the financial aid. And I hope that you'll have all your questions answered. And if not today, make sure that you reach out to us again. President Cambray has mentioned that this is a time of great excitement, even as it's a time of challenge. And one of the things that we're doing is making sure that our online educational experience is the analog to our campus experience, which is defined by conversation, by dynamic interaction, by people raising questions that are of great import. And so what we are doing is putting together with faculty and staff and some existing students, we're developing a highly interactive online experience. It is an online community of inquiry, if you will. And it's basically made up of three components: faculty, students, and of course the content and educational content, educational resources that we use. And so what we're doing is making sure that your experience will be the equivalent of a campus experience. By that we mean it is highly interactive, highly conversation-based. You will see that there will be dynamic interactions between yourself and other students. And we would call that a kind of social, cultural interaction. But there'll be also dynamic interaction between you and the content and the educational resources. So you may find that in the middle of your course, a video is presented to you. And in that video is stopped at a certain point, and a very fundamental question of inquiry that engages your mind, engages your past experience, and engages what you've read in the previous modules to come to terms with a very difficult question. And so then you will engage your fellow cohort members in what this question's about. What is its history? What are the fundamental aspects of it? How does it fit into larger systems and networks? And as you come to terms with that, your faculty will come in, and that will be the third part of engaging students to student, student to the content, and then student with the faculty. So there'll be social engagement and cognitive engagement between you and the material, and then a teaching engagement with the faculty. And so there'll be equal sharing and dynamic. And we base this on a very well thought out idea around constructivist learning. The idea that knowledge is not just something in a book that you can apply to life in its rapidly changing, discontinuous change. This is something where knowledge has to be created out of the dialogue, out of the dialectic, out of the interaction between people, socially constructed, student to faculty member. And so we believe that this will be a highly challenging curriculum, as well as allowing you to be held held and coached by your fellow cohort members as well as the faculty. In addition, we will also be bringing in special guests who are scholars in the field from abroad who will be part of your courses. And so it'll extend out into the world as we face these questions of inquiry about how the world works, how to manage change, how to make sure that we can confidently determine relevant information and use it effectively in the world and using it ethically. So with your faculty, your cohort members, and other guests, you will be well prepared to use your education in a world of rapid change. And this is why Pacifica Now.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Joe.
Excellent. Thank you, Drs. Cambray and Dr. Rojcewicz. We appreciate the wonderful welcome. This is truly circumscribed by, our depth psychological premises, and we intend to deliver our Pacifica graduate experience instruction in those 3 different modals that Dr. Rojcewicz just mentioned earlier. At this point in our presentation, we will be presenting to you about our admissions processes. So I will be sharing my screen with everybody. And great. So I just want to remind everyone that, if you should you have any questions or concerns about our subsequent presentations in admissions and financial aid, again, we will be having our breakout rooms after the presentations where you will be able to interact live with our advisors. I would also like to mention that, due to our circumstances, we are all working remotely, and therefore we might have some interruptions with our internet. So please be patient and bear with us, but hopefully we could get through this as smoothly as possible. So again, thank you all for coming today. Again, my name is Rika Toribio. I'm the Senior Director of Enrollment Management here at Pacifica Graduate Institute, and I will be discussing our admissions processes. So Pacifica Graduate Institute, what are our mission and core values? Pacifica Graduate Institute is a WASC accredited graduate institution, and we offer master's and doctorate degrees framed in the traditions of depth psychology. What that means is Pacifica Graduate Institute frames and circumscribes all of our programs within depth psychology. The institution nourishes cultural diversity and individual differences. And of course, we foster the tending of the soul and of the world. So we certainly value the experiential and community component of our programs. If you do not know, by now, we are actually nestled in the coastal foothills of Santa Barbara, California. A lot of our students may be coming from out of state or abroad. And so this is coming to visit Santa Barbara once we open our campuses would certainly be an experience. And we were established over 40 years ago. Now, why Pacifica? Again, this is due to our very bespoke depth psychological program. And this depth psychological program extends to the community, the culture, and ecological issues. Our students are committed not just to getting an education, but to doing something important that carries real meaning and engages with their community. For fall 2020, we are enrolling the following programs. So all of our programs are still open, and I just want to clarify that we do not have a June 1 deadline. So our admissions is rolling, therefore you can continuously apply with us even after June 1st and until the start of the programs, either in September or October. So we do have our master's in counseling psychology, and then we have our master's to PhD in clinical psychology. What that means is you do a master's first and then you segue towards the PhD program. We also have our PhD in integrative therapy and healing practices. We have a master's to PhD in Jungian psychology and archetypal studies. We also have a master's to PhD in community psychology, liberation psychology, indigenous psychology, and eco-psychologies. Our master's to PhD in mythological studies will also be in for fall 2020, as well as our master's in engaged humanities and creative life. For fall 2021, we are actually launching a brand new program in counseling psychology, PsyD. However, we would like to let you know that we are now accepting applications for all of these programs. So, how do we apply to Pacifica? I would like to let you all know that for participating today, as well as our previous webinars, that we are waiving your $75 application fee, and you will be able to avail of this through our application page, through the webinar landing page when you registered for this webinar. And once you apply, if you have not yet, we encourage you to correspond with your admissions advisors regarding your next steps. Pacifica is very different in that, you know, with some institutions, you apply and then you submit your application and you don't hear from anyone for a while. But with us, it's quite different. The way we do it is that Pacifica, actually, we have you correspond with our advisors consistently and frequently, so that they could hold your hand and that you will understand what their next steps are. And how would you be able to get all of your documents in? You can either email them to your advisors if you have a consistent correspondence with them, but we encourage you to email them all in applicant@pacifica.edu. For our application requirements, again, we offer rolling admissions. That means we do not have a deadline this June. Instead, you can submit all of your documents until towards the start of the semester. However, we highly recommend that you do submit all of them before or by August 30th. And the reason behind this is because our admissions process has multiple steps. Once you complete your documents and once you have submitted your documents, you will actually be scheduled for review with the individual departments that you applied for. So what happens is that our chairs and our program administrators will then review your file to see if they would like to invite you for an interview. Now, some programs, it depends on the programs, how their interview format will be. So some of those required documents are personal statements, typically about 3 to 5 pages. That's across the board. We would also be requiring your resume and your curriculum vitae, an 8 to 10 page academic writing sample, 3 letters of recommendation, and we say that this has to be academic and or professional recommendations only, and this should be accompanied by our recommendation form, and our acknowledgement of licensure requirements. Now, not all of our programs are for licensure, and so that's why we encourage you to speak with our advisor, because that's how you will know if, you know, there are certain licensure requirements that you must be able to check with your state board first and see what your next steps are. And of course, we require your official transcripts, and this must be from a regionally accredited or state-approved institution of higher education. And your bachelor's or master's level requirements are program specific. When I say this, because we do have certain programs that in order to matriculate, in order to start with a program, you already have to have a master's degree. However, we do have some programs that are master's to PhD, which means your requirement would just be your bachelor's degree. To contact us, you know, on our website, we have our list of advisors, and they are program specific. So should you need anything regarding counseling psychology, please contact Pandora Holmes, and her contact information is there, along with the contact information of all our other advisors. Now, as Dr. Cambray and Dr. Rojcewicz addressed earlier, you know, we are certainly handling our current situation, our COVID situation, the best way we could. And so for the safety and protection of all our students, as well as our faculty and staff, Pacifica will be conducting all of our classes virtually, summer 2020 and fall 2020. Now, later on during the breakout sessions, I'm sure you will have questions about, what about 2021? What about the residential aspects of it? Do I have to stay on campus next year? And so those we'll hopefully be able to address later on during the breakout sessions. As Dr. Rojcewicz mentioned earlier as well, Pacifica's experiential learning is a threefold dynamic interaction, which means that this experiential component will continue because there is that student-to-student interaction, albeit virtually, and there is the student-to-instructor, student to the selected course contact through our learning management system. You know, we are now connected more than any time, albeit virtually. And so our instruction will consist of synchronous virtual classwork as well as asynchronous coursework with our learning management system. So after this presentation and after our virtual sessions, again, we encourage you to consistently correspond with our admissions advisors because they will be able to walk you through the admissions process. And with that, I would like to turn this over to our financial aid coordinator, Sabrina Wilson, who will then be discussing our financial aid requirements.
Thank you, Rika. Hi, everybody. My name is Sabrina Wilson. I'm a financial aid coordinator here at Pacifica. Well, at Pacifica, since I'm not there. But yeah, so I'm not sure how everybody has paid for their undergrad, but here at, or I guess I should say at the graduate level, it's a little bit different. Your first step is to fill out your FAFSA. And once we get that, we will go ahead and review it. At that point, they're not looking at your financials at the graduate level. They are looking to see if you have hit your aggregate limit of $138,500 for your whole lifetime. If you haven't hit that, then you're entitled to $20,500 per year. You also cannot be in default in the last 6 months. Assuming that those two things haven't happened, like I said, you'll be entitled to $20,500 a year. We do understand that that will not cover your tuition and your fees, so we do work with what's called the Graduate Plus loan. That's a separate application, but you can find it in the same spot that you can find your FAFSA application. That one works a little bit different than the FAFSA. That one is credit-based. But they're not looking at your FICO score. They're looking to make sure that you haven't had any major defaults in the last 5 years, bankruptcy, foreclosure, those types of things. So at that point, we will get your information. Once you have been admitted to the school, we will package your aid. You would get an email from our office letting you know what you've been packaged for, the $20,500, and if you were accepted for your Graduate Plus loan, if you decide to go down that route. We will also send you some information on how financial aid office works at Pacifica and the types of things you will have to complete in order to receive your aid, master promissory notes, things of that sort. Also, we do offer Pacifica scholarships. We have our program-specific scholarships, and those range between $2,000 and $4,000. Those ones are renewable every year if you are awarded one of those. If you are not, you also can apply for the Educational Assistance Scholarship. That one's $1,000 a year. That one is not renewable, but you, excuse me, you can reapply for it every year. And that deadline is August 15th, and you can find that, that scholarship application on our website. You only have to turn in one scholarship application to be considered for both the program-specific and the educational assistance scholarship. By the time that deadline hits, you have to be accepted to the school, and you also have to have your FAFSA application. We have to have your FAFSA on file. Let's see. What else? Oh, and so here at Pacifica, we don't have a deadline for your FAFSA unless you are applying for a scholarship. So we process aid all year long. If you decide that you're going to pay for school for like the first semester of school, or I should say quarter of school out of pocket, and you decide that you need to apply for financial aid, you can do that at any point and we can process it. How it works here is we disperse in 4 equal payments. So you will have your package from fall, winter, spring, summer. We disperse the first Thursday after your first day of residential, which we still abide by even though we are all online right now. Once we do that, you'll get a notification from us that your bill, that it has come in and the money goes directly to the student accounts. If you do end up taking the Grad Plus and the unsubsidized loan, then you will get an email from student accounts on your refund if you have one coming to you. I can answer more in depth during our breakout sessions, but that's pretty much the gist of it. It's pretty straightforward. It can be confusing at first, but once we get the ball rolling on your financial aid, then it's pretty simple moving forward. So yeah, that's it. Rika, if you have anything else to add to that.
Thank you, Sabrina.